Welcome to Football Game Plan's FCS Kickoff presented by the Connecticut School of Broadcasting. I'm Emory Hunt, the czar of the playbook, and as we get ready to preview Week 6 in the FCS, we are starting to get an idea of which teams are looking like contenders and which ones are parading around as pretenders as we start to get into the meat of conference play. We have a lot to discuss this week in the FCS, and here's what's on tap for this episode. We'll go into our scouting scope to show you why you should check out the Towson-Stony Brook game this week. And we also have a film session with the Czar segment where we'll take a look at Jacksonville State, the Gamecocks offense, and what makes them so dangerous. And as always, we'll preview a slew of games on the schedule starting in the Northeast and work our way out west. But first, it's time to jump into our 4-minute offense as we take a look at some of the key storylines heading into Week 6. The Wagner Seahawks are off to an impressive 3-1 start to the season, and last week was their most impressive showing so far as they dominated the undefeated Sacred Heart Pioneers from start to finish en route to a 45-20 victory. That was the first Seahawks FCS opponent of the season, and he took care of business against one of the subdivision's best. Head coach Jason Hoteling spoke glowingly of his squad during NEC Media Day back in the summer, and it wasn't all lip service as his Seahawks looked vastly improved over last year. Not only was it a big win over a ranked opponent, but it was also an ever so important conference victory as well. Wagner plays host to Columbia this upcoming weekend as they'll try to push their record to 4-1. There are 9 teams remaining in the FCS that have yet to get their first victory of the season. Both the Yale Bulldogs and Bethune-Cookman Wildcats are the most surprising, as coming into this season, both teams look like they could have strong enough defenses that could at least carry them to a couple of victories while their offenses found their footing. You know, the coaching staffs on all of these squads are working tirelessly to make sure that this is the week that the losing ends. As all teams are in conference play, we could see some upsets this week, which will help a few of them get off the winless road and onto the winning track. So far this season, the most impressive conference, in my opinion, has been the Big South. The smallest conference has flexed their muscle this season with Charleston Southern, Kennesaw State, and Monmouth all notching big-time victories on the season. The Bucks knocked off Coastal Carolina last week in overtime. The Owls dismantled the SoCon's Furman Paladins, and Monmouth bested Fordham in an overtime victory with an impressive showing from quarterback Cody Williams and wide receiver Reggie White Jr. And a stud defensive end in Darnell Leslie played well also. Now, we've seen some good things from both Liberty and Gardner-Webb, and even Presbyterian is a tough out for opponents each and every week. With the way the Big South has played so far this season out of conference, we may see this team flirt with 2 representatives in the FCS playoffs. And finally, the Cornell Big Red has experienced a remarkable turnaround this season. Head coach David Archer has his squad sitting at 3-0 on the year with a big victories over Bucknell, Yale, and Colgate. The victory over the nearby Colgate Raiders was probably the most impressive, as Cornell was down 31-12 at halftime, only to come roaring back thanks to the right arm of quarterback Dalton Banks, who overcame early interceptions to toss 454 yards and 4 touchdowns. We'll see if the magic continues as they face an even bigger test on Saturday as they travel to Cambridge to take on the Harvard Crimson. Time to take a look back at Week 5 and hand out some Player of the Week honors. We have a tie for our Offensive Player of the Week. Both tailbacks to Rick Cohen of North Carolina A&T and Chase Edmonds of Fordham put up monster numbers and performances last week. Cohen, in a nationally televised game, lit up Hampton for 256 yards on the ground, including a 94-yard touchdown run that capped off an impressive night in front of plenty NFL scouts. Each week, Cohen has just proven that size is not a skill, and meanwhile, Edmonds had himself a day versus Monmouth. The 5'9", 205-pound junior ran for 208 yards, which included touchdown runs of 77 and 55. The latter was probably the most impressive as he broke 3 tackles and ran over another defender en route to the end zone, which helped send the game into overtime. Defensive Player of the Week honors goes to linebacker Santoni Graham of Wagner. Graham was all over the field for the Seahawks and played a big role in the upset victory over Sacred Heart with 11 tackles on the game, and 8 of those were solo stops. Our Special Teams Player of the Week honors goes to Youngstown State's kicker, Zach Kennedy, who provided 12 points for the Penguins, going 3 out of 3 on his field goal attempts and hitting all 3 of his extra point attempts as they beat South Dakota 30-20. So we'll take a quick break and be back with more of the FCS Kickoff.
New York City is the largest market for broadcast media. It's the epicenter for the TV and radio industry. If you ever had a dream of working in the thrilling broadcast world, then make it a reality by going to the Connecticut School of Broadcasting. CSB has helped numerous people get a job with hands-on training and a learn-by-doing mentality. You will learn all of the high-tech equipment in the TV and radio studios. From hosting your own radio show, to being a news or sports anchor, operating a camera in the TV studio, or editing audio and video, the choice is yours. Graduates from CSB have gone on to work at some of the major companies in the industry. To get more information, call 1-800-TV-RADIO or check us out at gocsb.com. Your road to success starts here at the Connecticut School of Broadcasting.
Welcome back to the FCS Kickoff. We just talked about two teams in Wagner and Cornell who are coming off big victories and upsets last weekend. So let's take a look at a few games and teams this week that should be on upset alert. And we'll start with the Wagner Seahawks as they host the Columbia Lions. This game ends up on our list because despite their 0-3 record, the Lions are not a bad football team. They have a good defense and special teams unit. It's their offense that head coach Al Bagnoli is waiting for to find its footing. And these are the type of teams you worry about because you don't know what to expect offensively. And as good as Wagner has played so far this year, we haven't seen them provide a pass rush. And I think that element will make this game a lot closer. But I like Wagner's offensive line and their ability to run the ball with both Keith Foster and Ryan Owens. Quarterback Alex Thompson has played outstanding ball as well. So look for the Seahawks to avoid the upset and get the victory. In the Missouri Valley Conference, North Dakota State travels to Missouri State to take on the Bears, and this has upset alert written all over it because, number one, North Dakota State is everybody's Super Bowl, and number two, Missouri State looks really good so far to start the season. The Bison are coming off a very convincing win against Illinois State where the outcome wasn't really in doubt. The Bison dominated up front defensively and got great play from quarterback Easton Stick, who went 13 of 18 for 256 yards and 3 touchdowns. The Bears quarterback Brody Lambert put in his own impressive performance with 3 touchdown passes and 279 yards through the air. Missouri State's offense is firing on all cylinders. They're a sustaining drive, and those drives are paying off with touchdowns. The biggest challenge in this game will come from their defense. Can linebacker Dylan Cole and company keep North Dakota State in second and long and third and long situations enough to where they force them to break their own tendencies? Early on, I think they can. Later on in the game, I highly doubt it. I like North Dakota State to win in a close one. Traveling out west, we have a Big Sky matchup to keep a watchful eye on as the Fighting Hawks of North Dakota travel to Sacramento State. The Hornets are coming off an impressive comeback victory over Montana State, and you can see that this is a young team that's finding a way to win and one that's starting to build some confidence. North Dakota is also coming off a big-time victory over Cal Poly. The Fighting Hawks did it the Fighting Hawks way, which is with a well-balanced offensive attack and a smothering defense. Now, this game ends up on this list because of the style of play that we've seen from North Dakota this season. It yields itself to a closely contested game. Now, they'll have to hit the ground running in order to avoid the upset, and I emphasize running because the Hornets give up an average of 187 yards a game on the ground at 4.6 yards a carry. So with that said, I find it hard to envision the Fighting Hawks not taking advantage of that. I like North Dakota. I would say that this has been a very competitive start to the Pioneer Football League season. As you see here in the standings, not much separation from the top to the bottom of the league. The Toreros of San Diego hold a 2-game lead over the rest of the conference as they are 3-1 on the season and winners of 2 straight games. I would keep an eye on the Stetson Hatters as their defense will give them a chance in each and every contest, and if their offense starts to come around, they could easily make a significant jump in the standings. Now, as we look at the schedule this week, there are a couple of games that leap out at you instantly. We'll go into detail with the Drake-Valparaiso game and the Morehead State-Dayton game later on in this episode or later on in the show, but keep an eye on the Davidson-San Diego matchup. The Wildcats are a much better team than their record indicates and could pose a surprise threat to San Diego. That Stetson-Brown matchup is another one of intrigue as things could get very interesting this weekend in Providence.
I think FCS presents such a great opportunity, at a school like Fordham and the rest of the Patriot League schools to get the best of both worlds. You're talking about, some of the top 60 academic institutions in the country. Combine that with, full scholarship Division I football that's able to compete on a national level. I think, from a recruiting standpoint and talking to other coaches, that's what we're identifying. We're identifying guys that academics and football are equally important. Not one more than the other, but truly equally important. I think that's the strength of FCS football, certainly in the Patriot League.
In the Southwestern Athletic Conference, the Jackson State Tigers, winners of 2 straight games, are starting to separate themselves in the East Division. Now, if you remember last week's episode, we talked about how the East has been the least this year in the SWAC after just being just as strong as their West counterparts last season. Meanwhile, it looks like the Bayou Classic this year will play a huge role in deciding who not only goes to the SWAC championship game, but also represents the conference in the 2nd annual Celebration Bowl, which takes place in Atlanta, Georgia. Both Grambling and Southern look really strong this year and have shown the ability to fight through adversity and win tough games. Prairie View A&M has a chance to make a run forward despite last week's loss to Grambling, and that noise you're hearing is definitely coming from Houston, Texas, as the Texas Southern Tigers under new head coach Mike Haywood have won 3 straight games and are sitting at 3-1 in the West Division. And we'll preview the big matchup between Prairie View and Alabama State, who is coming off a much-needed victory later on in the show. All right, let's preview some Week 6 games, shall we? We'll start in the northeastern part of the country and begin in Cambridge, where we have a battle of unbeaten squads as the Harvard Crimson play host to the Big Red of Cornell. This is going to be an outstanding game because of the matchups. The Big Red passing game led by quarterback Dalton Banks and wide receiver Colin Shaw has more than enough on the perimeter to give the Crimson some issues downfield. However, where Cornell has to win is in the trenches defensively. They have to be able to stop the Crimson ground game. Otherwise, it'll be a long night for them. Their 3-4 defense will rely on the play of nose guard Michael Staples. If he can force constant double teams, it'll allow those athletic linebackers the ability to find the football. For Harvard in this game, I like what I'm seeing from quarterback Joe Viviano. From a dual threat standpoint, the senior signal caller has done an outstanding job so far this season, keeping drives alive with his legs while keeping his eyes downfield on his scrambles. Now, it'll be his passing ability that can help push the Crimson over the top. Defensively, they'll need the secondary to be able to make plays above the rim. Cornell does an outstanding job attacking vertically down the field, and their receivers have no problems going up to make the contested catch. Again, this will be a well-played, entertaining matchup this weekend, one that will see the Cornell Big Red pull off the upset and knock off the Harvard Crimson in a shootout. Bucknell is looking to break its 3-game losing streak this week as they face the Holy Cross Crusaders. We know Bucknell defensively will do their part. This is still one of the stingiest defenses in the FCS. The question is, can their passing game help them out and not turn the ball over? Quarterback Matt Mew has to just hit his free throw, so to speak, as the Bison ground game will give him favorable play action opportunities downfield. Now, if you're Holy Cross head coach Tom Gilmore, you hope that you can get an encore performance from quarterback Jeff Wade, who played some really good ball against Lafayette, filling in for the injured Peter Pujols. Now, if Pujols is healthy and ready to go, then that's just a huge bonus. But if not, at least Gilmore knows what he has in Wade. The challenge in this game for the Crusaders will be in the trenches. They will have to own both sides of the line of scrimmage in order to win this one. To me, that's the part I foresee them struggling with. Look for Bucknell to be able to run the football and also frustrate the Crusader passing game with their defensive line. I like Bucknell to pick up their second win of the season. Huge matchup in the CAA as Richmond travels up to Albany to battle the Great Danes. Spiders quarterback Kyle Loletta will be the biggest X factor in this game as he's facing one of the more active and opportunistic defenses in the FCS. Now, Loletta at times has put the ball in harm's way, and Albany does a great job of making opposing quarterbacks pay for their mistakes. I also believe that it's up to Richmond to get their running back Xavier Goodall going early in this game to provide some offensive balance. Defensively, the Spiders have had issues in the red zone, which has made every game very interesting from a Spiders fan perspective. For Albany, can their offense sustain drives will be the biggest question. We know their offense relies heavily on the legs of Elijah Ibitoke Hanks, but they'll have to hit some plays early in the passing game to take that extra guy out of the box, which will make life a lot easier for them to run the ball offensively. On the defensive side, it's about winning on first down. In my opinion, the more they can get to Kyle Loletta to put the ball, or more they can get him to put the ball in the air, the better. Also, can the Great Danes win consistently in the trenches? I think they can. This is a team that believes that they can win every game, and with the way they don't beat themselves, I think they'll win this one as well. I like Albany. The Red Flash are looking to get to 500 as they take on the Robert Morris Colonials, and I'm pretty sure that St. Francis is tired of hearing about moral victories and that they should have won the game. In order to stop that, they have to stop shooting themselves in the foot in the passing game. Turnovers put their defense in bad spots, and their offense has had issues in trying to dig themselves out of early holes in these ball games. Now, for Robert Morris, it's the same thing. Turnovers. This is an offense that has issues running the football and also sustaining drives. You combine that with turnovers and a defense that has given up over 138 yards a game on the ground, and you can see why they've only won one game. Look for a dominating performance from the Red Flash on both sides of the ball, with quarterback Zach Dreyer playing a clean game in a St. Francis victory. This is a break the scoreboard type game as Colgate and Lehigh meet up on the gridiron. The Raiders let one slip away last week on homecoming weekend against Cornell. They held a 28-5 lead at one point in that game. Again, what we've seen from Colgate is the ability to put up points on the board in a hurry with their ground game and also with their passing attack. Quarterback Jake Melville has played outstanding so far this season. Defensively is where you have some concerns. The secondary has to be able to, number one, not give up the big play, and number two, communicate a lot better on the back end. I mean, they picked off Cornell 3 times. That's excellent, but then later on, they gave up 4 touchdowns. They're facing a passing game that's just as potent this week against Lehigh. The Mountain Hawks showed an abundance of riches at the quarterback spot last week as Nick Shavnisky was able to rest his ankle, and all his backup Brad Mays did was set school records for passing yards and tied one with 6 touchdowns in a game. This week, Shavnisky will be back in the lineup, and the task, in my opinion, will be to try to steal possessions away from the Raiders. Lehigh has a tremendous tailback in Don Bragalone, and I would expect them to try to get him going early and often in this contest. The question is if Lehigh's defense can stop the run. This is where Colgate thrives offensively. I think we'll see that 3-headed rushing attack of Colgate do a great job of playing keep away from Lehigh's offense. I like the Raiders in a barn burner. As we take a quick whip around the Northeast Conference, 3 teams have yet to play their first conference game. Both St. Francis and Robert Morris will play each other, however, this weekend, and Duquesne has the week off. This is a strong conference that has done well in their out-of-conference schedule. Duquesne, Wagner, and Sacred Heart boast winning records, while Bryant has played some really good football this season as they sit at 2-3. This week on the schedule, we've already talked about Columbia versus Wagner and St. Francis versus Robert Morris, but I want you to keep an eye on that Central Connecticut State Penn game. That's an opportunity for the Blue Devils defense to make a statement against one of the more dynamic offenses in the FCS.
1, 2, down. Hit. For me, I think the biggest thing that football taught me was how to overcome adversity.
At some point in your life, you're going to have some tough times.
You have to have that next play mentality.
That cohesiveness and that working together, that's really something special that you can't get in a lot of other areas.
When you practice that and you live that in other phases of your life, it becomes second nature because all you know how to do is fight.
It's not an easy game. If it were easy, everyone would do it.
You start to appreciate the smaller contributions that people make. You don't just look at the big one because you knew it took 6 or 7 other guys who are unsung.
And you can't take shortcuts and be successful.
Doing what they do to make it possible for the guy getting the press clippings or whatever it might be.
In this game, whether it's as a coach or a player.
So I would certainly say that you definitely got a very quick lesson in how to overcome adversity playing football.
Over in the Colonial Athletic Association, I like to say this is Show Me Something Saturday, as there are some big-time matchups on the schedule this weekend. We have Richmond versus Albany, Maine versus Delaware, New Hampshire versus Elon, Stony Brook versus Towson, and James Madison versus William & Mary. This is just the mark of a strong conference where you get matchups like this very early in the season. And quietly, the Villanova Wildcats are going about their business in an impressive way. Winners of 4 straight games, the Wildcats have been straight up excellent defensively, led by linebacker Austin Calitro and defensive lineman Tana Passigno. We sort of expected this type of play from the Double Blue this season, as it's the final season in the future Hall of Fame career of head coach Andy Talley. Another shout out goes to the Albany Great Danes and their defense that has only given up 60 points on the season. And we'll preview a lot of these big game matchups in our preview segment. One program that is turning the corner would be the Elon Phoenix, known for their great play in the secondary. I've been very impressed with their defensive line and running game. They were also able to upset William & Mary a couple of weeks ago and will try to do the same this weekend against New Hampshire. Looking at the standings, you can see why I said it's Show Me Something Saturday. Teams in the CAA can make a lot of distance from one another after this week. Sticking with the Colonial Athletic Association, there's a big-time matchup from a scouting perspective that we're very interested in, and that's Stony Brook versus Towson. Here's why you should get familiar with this game from an NFL draft standpoint as we put this game under our scouting scope. The reason why this is a great game from a scouting perspective to watch is because of the prospect-worthy players that will directly impact the game and will all take place inside the box. The two headliners in this matchup are Towson's talented tailback Darius Victor and Stony Brook's versatile defensive lineman Aaron Thompson. Victor we've talked about before, but the 5'8", 215-pound tailback has a lot of Ray Rice-like skills. He's built low to the ground, he's powerful, and shows above-average burst to rip off long runs. Thompson is yet another talented pass rusher coming from this Stony Brook program. The 6'3", 260-pound pass rusher has 12 career sacks and 25 TFLs in his career. These two guys will be counted on heavily to lead their team to victory, and scouts will be watching how much of an impact that they can have. The other prospects to watch are a mix of highly thought of juniors and underrated seniors. For Towson, clearing the way for Victor will be fullback Emmanuel Holder. Holder is 6'2", 265 and is a bull of a blocker that shows the ability to catch the football out of the backfield and the ability to carry the rock in a one-back situation. Versatile junior offensive lineman Amos Campbell will probably draw the assignment of having to block Thompson or another junior prospect in this game, Stony Brook's Osamane Kamara. Now, Campbell can play center, guard, as well as left tackle, and at 6'3", 300 pounds, he has firmly added himself on many 2018 prospect watch lists. Now, the same can be said for Osamane Kamara, who has been a stud player since stepping foot on campus. This season, he has 7 tackles, 1.5 TFLs, and also a sack. Offensively for Stony Brook, their junior tailback Stacy Bedell is a legit game breaker. He missed virtually all of last season with an injury, but now he's back at 100% and is leading the team in rushing once again with 222 yards on the ground and 5 touchdowns. Blocking for Bedell up front is the athletic offensive tackle Timon Paris. Now, Paris at 6'5", 310 is a 3-year starter and an all-conference performer. He's a tremendous athlete with excellent footwork. Trying to stop Bedell is Towson's main man in the middle. Malik Jackson, the 5'11", 222-pound senior, is a blur from sideline to sideline and isn't afraid to step into traffic and take on blocks from the offensive lineman. Jackson has gotten progressively better each and every season and also does a great job in pass coverage. So I said all that to say this: Towson Stony Brook has many storylines. One, because it's a really important conference game for both teams, but it is also a great game to see some inside the box type talent that will end up playing on Sundays pretty soon. The Big South may rival the SoCon this year as the toughest conference in the FCS, and many will hate that statement, but the proof is in the pudding. These guys have played some outstanding football so far this season. Kennesaw State has proven that last year's success wasn't a fluke and have won 3 straight games, which have put them right in the thick of the conference race. Monmouth is coming off a big victory last week versus Fordham, where we saw 2 sophomores grow up right before our eyes in quarterback Cody Williams and wide receiver Reggie White Jr. And no one wants to face Charleston Southern and that doggone option attack. Now, this week is light on the conference schedule. We'll preview the Howard-Monmouth game, as that has a ton of intrigue in it. And the only conference game is an important one, as the Running Bulldogs of Gardner-Webb take on the Presbyterian Blue Holes. Presbyterian is one of the more fundamentally sound football teams you'll find in the FCS, and they'll have their hands full against a Gardner-Webb defense that features 2 of the best linebackers in the country in Chad Jeter and Aaron Cook. You want physical football? Tune in and check out this game that's going to take place in Bowling Springs, North Carolina, as it will be streamed live on ESPN3.
I think that the main reason to choose HBCU is for the family atmosphere. The guys are going to get the core values that their parents taught them, that their family members tried to raise them. You'll have a close-knit atmosphere. You'll actually have guys that care about you as a person. So I think that's the main reason for choosing the HBCU.
The usually strong MEAC has been a bit more top-heavy so far in the 2016 season. The North Carolina A&T Aggies have been the leaders of the pack, and it's no surprise that they are, since they boast the best running back in Tariq Cohen and the best defensive line in the conference, led by Marquise Ragland. But as we look at the standings, the Aggies will once again face a heavy challenge from the always tough North Carolina Central Eagles. And check out Morgan State. The Bears have won 2 in a row. They're 2-0 in the conference, 2-2 overall, and new head coach Fred Farrier has done an outstanding job with the squad this year. The biggest question as we take a look at this week's schedule is what team in the middle of the pack has a chance to make a serious move up the rankings. History would tell you that you always bet on South Carolina State, as the Bulldogs have a huge game this week versus Bethune-Cookman. This will still be a tough game for the Bulldogs, as the Wildcats are a well-coached bunch and are much better than their 0-4 record indicates. Now, there's another big game on the slate as well, as head coach Gary Harrell's Howard Bison takes on the Monmouth Hawks, and we'll break that big matchup down in a few. That's a barometer game for Howard. Now, you look at new head coach at Savannah State, Eric Rayburn, has his Tigers believing, and they themselves have a barometer game this week against Morgan State. Once again, it should be an exciting week in the Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference. Moving on to the Mid-Atlantic region of games this week, the Princeton Tigers travel to the nation's capital to take on the Georgetown Hoyas. I think this is a pivotal game for both squads at this early juncture of the season. The Tigers routed Columbia last week thanks to a great day from quarterback Chad Canoff, whom we'll talk about later on in this show. And Georgetown is coming off a tough loss to Harvard in a game where they had a couple of opportunities to actually win it. Who can stop the run and which passing game can have consistent success? will be the ultimate determining factor in who will win this game. I'll be one of the color commentators for this game on the Patriot League Network, so I won't give you a prediction, but I will say that this is one of those games that you should definitely tune into.
Thursday night MEAC action as Norfolk State takes on North Carolina A&T, and for the Spartans in this ballgame, their short passing game has a chance to give the Aggies fits. I like what quarterback Greg Hankerson and those receivers can do underneath to a defense, and if he can get the ball in the hands of those playmakers quickly, they know what to do with it. On the flip side for North Carolina A&T, the little things have to be big in the minds of this squad. Drop passes, penalties that extend drives, those things can't happen this week because the Spartans are a team that if you let them hang around, they have the talent to make you pay. Ultimately, I think the Aggies take care of business in this one. I have a hard time saying this Norfolk State run defense, which has been an issue all season long, stopping Tariq Cohen, and an offensive line that has issues in protecting the quarterback, keeping Angelo Keys and company out of the backfield. I like the Aggies. You'll get treated to two tremendous young wide receivers in the Monmouth-Howard game, and we'll start with the Hawks sophomore wideout Reggie White Jr., who shows very good run-after-the-catch skills and the knack for the big play. With an improving quarterback in Cody Williams and newfound depth in the backfield, the Monmouth offense looks to have hit its stride last week versus Fordham. Defensively in this game, their run defense will be tested similarly to what it was tested against Fordham. Howard boasts tremendous depth in the backfield, led by running back Anthony Filial, and for the Bison, their young freshman wideout Kyle Anthony is supremely athletic and has shown the ability to make contested catches with ease, and also has a great set of hands, which allows him the ability to pluck the football out of the air. Now, defensively for the Bison, I worry about their ability to give up the big play, especially in the passing game. Despite the talent on the back end, Howard has trouble communicating, and you're seeing multiple busts in coverage. The Bison offense will be game, but I don't think defensively they'll be able to slow down the Monmouth Hawks. Look for Monmouth to go into Green Stadium and grab a victory. William and Mary finds themselves in a must-win situation this week as they face the red-hot James Madison Dukes. Now, what has plagued the Tribe so far this season has been the play of quarterback Steve Cluley. He has to play better. It's as simple as that. The Tribe can run the football. They can protect up front. The interceptions are both drive killers and also put the defense, who has played well enough considering the circumstances to win, in bad situations. Speaking of the defense, they are solid on the back end, but they haven't been able to get their pass rush going all season long. What will be put to the test in this one is their ability to apply pressure versus the run game, as James Madison loves to spread the field and run the rock. The Dukes are averaging 342 yards on the ground, which puts them in a pass if we need to type situation where they have also excelled. Quarterback Brian Shore has done a great job on both ends of offense, while the Dukes defense is able to remain fresh and just pin their ears back once they get on the field and get after the QB. I like James Madison in this ball game. Look for the Dukes defense to be the biggest reason why they are successful, as I think the Tribe will be game defensively, but their offense will struggle for the third consecutive week. In the SoCon, we have another game of intrigue as the East Tennessee State Bucks travel to Lexington, Virginia to take on the Keydets of VMI. It's been two different seasons for the Bucks after 4 games. In the first two, both victories, their offense was well balanced and they were getting key stops defensively. The latter two contests, their offense has only scored 7 points, and defensively, they haven't been able to stop anyone. The hope is that they can get back to what worked earlier in the year, and that's been running the football with Jawan Stinson. And if they can go with heavier personnel this week versus that 3-4 defense of the Keydets, I think they could have some success. VMI is coming off a tough overtime loss to Mercer, but you have to be impressed with how they've done on both sides of the ball this season. The Keydets offense is one that attacks you in every quadrant of the field, and defensively they possess great speed and athleticism at the second level, which allows them to chase a run down from the backside and also be effective in pass coverage. The goal for this game is for them to learn how to put opponents away. So expect East Tennessee State to try and take advantage of an aggressive VMI defense, but at the end of the day, the Keydets offense will prove to be too much for this Bucks defense. VMI wins it.
What a great week it was in the Ohio Valley Conference last weekend. Murray State quarterback KD Humphreys had the best performance, going 49 of 60, which was a record for completions, for 455 passing yards and 5 touchdowns in a win versus Austin Peay. Humphreys is one of the best quarterbacks in the FCS, and the Racers need him to continue to raise his level of play the rest of the way. Looking at the standings, Tennessee State played a heck of a game last week to knock off UT Martin, overcoming early turnovers and a 16-point deficit to win the game. The Tigers stand alone as the only undefeated team in the OVC. Jacksonville State has yet to play a conference game this season and will play their first this weekend versus Tennessee Tech. This has been a solid start for the conference, as you have 3 teams that are over 500 and 3 teams that are within a game of that 500 mark. Now, we love tightly contested conference races here at the FCS Kickoff, and as you look at the schedule of Week 6, you see some pivotal games. Eastern Illinois, Tennessee State will break down later in this episode, but many will be interested in the Southeast Missouri State Eastern Kentucky game. The Red Hawks have opened up conference play with a 2-0 record and could grab a big-time victory over the Colonels, who have been inconsistent out of the gate this season. I hate to say that this is a must-win game for Eastern Kentucky, but if we're being honest here, this is a must-win game for Eastern Kentucky. They want to right the ship and make a push to get back atop the OVC.
Don't forget to check out and grab your copy of our 2 newly released books, Football: A Love Story and What Did Football Teach Me? These books feature over 100 stories from current and former coaches, players, executives, and entertainers from across the football landscape, describing what got them involved in the game, what they love about it, and what life lessons the game taught them. You can find your copy or order your copy from our website at footballgameplan.com/books.
Oh, I think the FCS is really, when you look at it, it's the perfect model for football. Okay, in that as a coach, number one, you deal with Division I, it's great. You deal with a high level of athlete. In our case, you deal with a high level of student. It's extremely competitive football. It's a great environment, but it's also doesn't have some of the trappings that the bigger levels have as far as the business and the money of things. But it's pure football. And as a coach, that's what I like is it's about the football. And I think the way we determine our champion is the best playoff system in all of sports. And I think that you can never argue with who the national champion is at the FCS level. And it's just top to bottom the most competitive bracket of playoff sports there is in any of the sports. So if you like the action, I think the quality of play is extremely high. I think the quality of person is extremely high. I think there's some great coaches at our level, and it's attainable to fans too. It's also you come to an FCS game, you have a little bit more of a close experience to the players. And in our case, the players meet the people in the town. It's right there. They're not kind of like these pros in waiting. You can reach out, you can touch them, you can meet the coaches, you can do that stuff. It's just enjoyable football at a real high level still.
Welcome back to the FCS Kickoff, presented by the Connecticut School of Broadcasting. I'm Emory Hunt, the czar of the playbook. Jacksonville State has been outstanding under head coach John Gross. In his 3rd season with the Gamecocks, he has accumulated a 26-5 record with 2 Ohio Valley Conference titles and a trip to the national championship game last season. One of the big reasons why is due to the fact that their offense is so hard to defend and game plan against. In this edition of Film Session with the Czar, we'll take a look at the Gamecocks offense and what makes it so dangerous.
The first thing that really leaps out at you is the movement of this offense, and movement forces the defense to respond. So let's freeze it right here. As the fake goes to the short side of the field, coming back field side is the swing pass, and these 2 moves alone is enough to hold the linebackers in place, and now you can really get what you want in the passing game on the outside. And as we run it, you're going to freeze it right here again. You see everyone at the second level is focused on what's going on in the backfield. I hope there's a great movie that's being played in the backfield, because you just left all 3 wide receivers one-on-one in space. Now you see how they try to influence the deep safety by running a high-low crosser behind him, guy in front of him, guy going behind him. Good quarterback finds the open guy down the field, one-on-one coverage versus space, and completes the pass. And just want to focus on how they attack you in the running game. You look at this offensive line and how well they block, and what they're trying to accomplish is getting the backside guard pulling with the H-back front side and leading the back in the hole on a counter play. And it's going to be blocked perfectly. As we run it right here, you see both guys pull around. And if you're the back, you have to see nothing but daylight in front of you. Holy gaping hole, Batman. That's a hole you want to run through as a back. I can run through that hole right now. And you're going to see as those 2 guys come around, they get great blocks. You have great blocking on the outside by the receivers, and the running back is able to do what he's supposed to do and take it to the house. So again, this offense not only does put a lot of pressure on you from a passing standpoint, but also in the running game. And that's why Jacksonville State has always been one of the tougher teams to defend when you're facing a John Gross coach football team. So their offense is outstanding, in my opinion.
You can make a legit case that the SoCon is the best conference in the FCS this season. Chattanooga and the Citadel are amongst the few undefeated teams left in the subdivision, and 5 other teams are at 500 or better. Defense has been the mark of this conference. It's the common theme amongst those at the top, while even the losing record teams have pretty solid defenses. Looking at the standings, the Furman Paladins being winless is pretty shocking to me. This is a team that gave Michigan State all they could handle earlier in the year. Now, one has to think that they are right there and approaching their breakthrough, but they have to put it together on the field. And I've been impressed with both VMI and Mercer. They played a classic game last week that saw Mercer come away victorious, but all eyes are on both Chattanooga and the Citadel. These teams are, in my opinion, serious contenders to make it to Frisco, Texas. Now, as we take a look at this week's schedule, you see another up-and-coming team in East Tennessee State versus VMI. Chattanooga and Mercer playing a big-time statement game for Mercer, and we'll preview both games today, but keep an eye on Furman versus Sanford, as this is one of those type of games that the Paladins could come up and surprise. This will be a great matchup between the Bulldogs passing game and the Paladins secondary. You can call it a chess match on the football field if you want to, but most games in the Southern Conference are anyways.
Does going to work every day seem like a chore? When you watch TV or listen to the radio, do you find yourself thinking, I could do that? If you've always wanted a career in the exciting world of broadcasting, then stop dreaming and start doing. As the nation's oldest and largest group of broadcasting schools, the Connecticut School of Broadcasting will train you in a matter of months for the career you've always wanted. Our unique, learn by doing, hands-on training, and small classes taught by industry professionals allow for personalized attention. Whether your interests lie in audio and video production, or if you want to be a TV or radio personality, with 12 campuses spanning the East Coast, CSB can help your dreams become reality.
We got our start at CSB.
We got our start at CSB.
I got my start at CSB. Will you?
The Southland Conference is and has always been an exciting brand of football. Last week we had the Battle of the Piney Woods between Sam Houston State and Stephen F. Austin combining for 91 points. Central Arkansas and Abilene Christian combined for 85 points themselves. So there's never a shortage of points coming from this conference. As we look at the standings, you see the top 4 teams in the Bears, Bearcats, Cowboys, and Lumberjacks. Here's the thing about this conference. If you have defense, you can be champion. We've seen this play out time and time again with Southeastern Louisiana, McNeese State, and Sam Houston State. The Bearcats this year look to have the best defensive squad with Central Arkansas right behind them. Both get the job done with the play of their defensive line, and both teams are able to get that kind of pressure that disrupts the passing game and also affects the running game. As we take a look at this week's schedule, I think Stephen F. Austin versus Nichols is going to be a really good game. The Colonels have looked real good this season, especially on the defensive side of the football. Quarterback Chase Forcade has done an admirable job as a freshman leading the Colonels, and we'll see if they can notch a big-time win versus the Lumberjacks, who have 2 good quarterbacks themselves in Hunter Taylor and the coach's son, Zach Conkey. Always check your local listings and times for the game and starts. Heading down south, it's only fitting that after we just took a look at Jacksonville State's offense, we'll lead off with their game versus Tennessee Tech as we preview some Week 6 matchups from the southern region of the country.
Tennessee Tech and Jacksonville State provides us with a great stylistic matchup this weekend. The Golden Eagles offense is both dynamic and potent. No lead is safe against this group. I like the pace and tempo in which the Golden Eagles play with. Quarterback Michael Birdsong does a great job of facilitating the football to many different targets. In this contest, it'll be about using that passing game as a pseudo run game to control the clock. If they can force the Gamecocks to consistently make plays in space defensively, then they have a shot. For Jacksonville State, I like what defensive end Darius Jackson has done so far this season. The athletic 6'3", 237-pound junior has racked up 5 sacks and 7.5 TFLs on the season. I would expect a little bit of creativity coming from defensive coordinator David Blackwell, drawing up some zone blitzes to get Jackson to drop into short area passing zones to take that away from Tennessee Tech. Offensively, quarterback Eli Jenkins has done a great job being efficient, which is also being effective. Now, this game, I like the matchup up front with their offensive line led by Casey Dunn versus the Tennessee Tech front seven. They'll lean on those guys and slowly take the air out of the football en route to a Gamecock victory. Home conference game this week in the Big South pits Presbyterian against Gardner Webb, and it's been maddening to see how out of sync the Blue Holes have been offensively this year. We know they have an outstanding tailback in Darrell Bridges, but they haven't been able to find that level of consistency that made them a threat to win every game last season. Defensively, we're not seeing the same level of discipline from a unit that is normally both fundamentally sound and also gap sound. They had 2 weeks to prepare for the Running Bulldogs, who come into this game with the best linebacking core in the Big South Conference. Chad Jeter, Kenyatta Dunbar, and Aaron Cook make it very tough for an offense to have success on Saturdays, but their offense has also had similar struggles to piece together consecutive positive plays. They got back on track last week versus Benedict, but they have to do a better job of staying on the field. Also, not to totally absolve their defense, they'll have to find ways to create pressure. Right now, the line isn't holding up at the point of attack, so look for this to be a physical contest early on, but I like Gardner Webb in this game. What they have shown offensively so far this season, especially early in games, is the ability to strike quick, and I believe that'll happen again versus Presbyterian. I like this matchup between Dayton and Morehead State. Dayton is coming off a very good win versus Drake, and I think coming into this contest, it will be wise for the Flyers to scale back a bit on their pass-happy offense and put the ball in the belly of running back Tucker Yinger. The Flyers should be able to find some success running the football against this Eagles defense, and for Morehead State, I look to the secondary as a place where they'll have to win consistently. Dayton loves to push the ball vertically, so guys like Braylon Cook and Matthew Brewer have to be ready to make plays on the ball. Offensively speaking, the Eagles do operate with a good bit of balance. Last week, we saw Jake Raymond play big-time football in a victory over Valparaiso, and most importantly, we saw quarterback Austin Gahafer play well also. I like Morehead State in this game. The Eagles' defense, in my opinion, is underrated and has done a lot from a disruptive standpoint, both up front and in the secondary, so look for the Eagles to post back-to-back victories for the first time this season. Alabama State, who is fresh off of a victory over Arkansas Pine Bluff, meets Prairie View A&M in another pivotal Southwestern Athletic Conference matchup. The Hornets got their first victory of the season last week because of their ability to finally find balance on offense. Quarterback Quinteris Toppins did an excellent job throwing the football, and defensively, we started to see a lot of what we expected to see coming from the Hornets this season. They were able to get to the quarterback 6 times last week, and in this game, they'll be facing a quarterback in Trey Green who has the ability to escape pressure and create outside of the framework of the offense. For the Panthers in this game, they'll need the aforementioned Trey Green to do a better job of protecting the football. As talented as he is as a player, 48% completion percentage and 9 interceptions on the season isn't going to get Prairie View to the Celebration Bowl. The passing game can have success versus the Hornets, but it starts with ball security. Defensively, all attention should go to stopping running back Khalid Thomas. Alabama State wants to run the football, and the obvious attack will be to take that away and make them one-dimensional. This is a strength versus strength battle, the Hornets offensive line versus the Panthers defensive line, and I think ultimately which offense can you trust on a consistent basis? I like Prairie View in that respect. I also like their defense's ability to get to the quarterback, so look for defensive end Devon Reed to have a big day. Nice Southland Conference battle here in Hammond, Louisiana, as the McNeese State Cowboys come to town to face the Southeastern Louisiana Lions. It's been interesting to see this Cowboys offense transition from a run-based attack to more of a pass first, second, and sometimes third offense. What has made this possible is the play of quarterback James Tabary, who has done a masterful job directing this offensive attack. Defensively for the Cowboys, they've done a great job getting off the field. The third down defense will be put to the test this week versus a Lions offense that has good all-around game. Southeastern Louisiana's running game is what I'm most impressed with. I'm a big fan of Rashid Harrell's game. The 5'10 195-pound senior brings a little bit of everything to the table. He has the power to run inside and the speed and elusiveness to threaten on the perimeter. Defensively for the Lions, they just haven't been able to have success at all this season. Not being able to stop the run, get to the quarterback, or clamp down in the red zone has all been a factor to the Lions' 1-3 start. Now, I think they'll struggle with all three again in this one, so I like the Cowboys to win it. The Bearcats bring their point-a-minute offense on the road in conference versus Incarnate Word. Jeremiah Briscoe set records last week with his 7-touchdown performance en route to a victory over Stephen F. Austin. The Bearcats attack every part of the field with both speed and explosiveness, which makes them very tough to defend. If you're Incarnate Word in this matchup, you look toward your ability to run the ball with Broderick Reeves and Desmond Hite. To me, that's their biggest key to victory. They have to be able to win or own the time of possession and also have it pay off with points in the red zone. If the Cardinals' offensive line can win that matchup between P.J. Hall and company in the trenches, things could get very interesting for Incarnate Word and Sam Houston State. I don't think it'll happen, as the Cardinals' secondary has had their issues defending the pass. While Briscoe won't toss 6 touchdowns, I do think he'll have a great day in the passing game. Look for the Bearcats to roll in this one. It's homecoming weekend in Chattanooga as the Mercer Bears come to town. The Bears have won back-to-back games, both in thrilling fashion. What's been impressive this season for Mercer has been the play of quarterback John Russ in the passing game. We knew the Bears' signal caller was solid in facilitating the running game, but making big strides in the passing game has really opened up Mercer's offense. Defensively is where I think they'll have to be excellent versus the Mocs. This week they're facing an aggressive defensive front seven, and the best way to neutralize that aggressiveness is with misdirection, spreading the field, and forcing the Mocs to play an east-west game instead of a north-south game. Now, Mercer has been solid versus the passing game, and if they can make Chattanooga one-dimensional, it bodes well for their chances. For Chattanooga in this ball game, their offense has been effective on both ends. They're deep in the backfield and are able to switch up styles throughout a game. That level of control gives opposing defenses, or keeps opposing defenses off balance. Now, defensively, it's about playing a disciplined game versus the Bears' pistol offense. If the Mocs can remain gap sound for 4 quarters, I think they have a chance. I do believe this will be their toughest test so far this season, and one that I think they'll pass. I like Chattanooga. Taking a quick whip around the Missouri Valley Football Conference, 8 out of the 10 teams are at 500 or better on the season. And trust me, you don't want to face those other 2 squads on this list in Illinois State and South Dakota, as they are a lot tougher than their record may indicate. Now, looking at this conference schedule this week, you'll see that South Dakota team playing Northern Iowa, and we'll see if the Coyotes are able to pull off the upset. That should be an outstanding game. And we'll break down many of these other games on the Missouri Valley Football Conference schedule later on in the show.
The FCS, in my mind, is the greatest level of football in the country. It doesn't necessarily always have the resources, the glitz, the glamour of the FBS level, but the FCS is a level that I think plays outstanding football. It's extremely competitive. It plays to a national champion at the end in a tournament format, and I think the experience of aiming for that championship is something that you can't get on any other level.
Welcome back to the FCS Kickoff. I know I say this every week, but there is a ton of FCS NFL draft talent that's out there on display across the subdivision. Here are 9 prospects and their matchups that you want to pay close attention to in our 5th down draft outlook.
The first prospect we'll start off with is Chad Kanoff, the 6'4", 225-pound quarterback from Princeton. I'll be on the call this game versus Georgetown, but what I'll be watching for from a scouting perspective is how he's able to navigate through the pressure. He rebounded from a 3-interception game versus Lehigh 2 weeks ago with a 21 out of 25, 230-yard passing effort and 3 touchdowns with no interception performance last week in a victory over Columbia. So he'll see a ton of pressure and exotic coverages from Georgetown, so it'll be critical for him to continue to trek in the right direction. He's a very good athlete that has a lot of Carson Palmer-like movements within the pocket. Running back Dalton Crossan has good all-around game at 5'11", 204 pounds. Crossan has shown the ability to be sturdy running inside and also has the explosiveness that you want to see from the position. This is evident by his ability to return kickoffs for the Wildcats in addition to what he does as a running back. And I will be paying close attention in this matchup versus Elon to how he's utilized in the passing game, both as a receiver and also in blitz pickup. With this ability to run and return kicks, the added value he could bring as a receiver coming out of the backfield and also as a blocker would make him a 3-down player and could definitely boost his stock in the eyes of evaluators. I became more impressed with Rashawn Proctor's game with each Hampton game I saw this season. Proctor has solid all-around game, good size at 5'11", 200 pounds, and is the leading receiver on the Pirates football team. He averages over 113 yards a game and posted big-time performances versus Old Dominion and North Carolina A&T. In this matchup, I just want to see more visibility against zone coverage, making adjustments on the fly, and also getting himself open quickly to show his quarterback his numbers so that way he can catch the football. Now, he does have great ability after the catch and is also the leading kickoff return on the squad, which speaks to his acceleration and his long speed. Mike Estes out of Gardner-Webb is one of the best tight end prospects in the FCS this season. He's a 6'4", 230-pound receiving option that has been moved all across the formation. Now versus Presbyterian, I'm looking to see how he blocks. It doesn't matter if he's in line, flexed, or flanked. I want to see how he attacks the running game and how his effort is in that department. Now, what I already know about Estes is that he's a tremendous receiver that maximizes the few opportunities he gets a game because of this Gardner-Webb offensive attack. Now, I want to see the other side of his game and what he brings to the table. J.P. Flynn plays a huge role in the Bobcats offense. He's an integral part to their ground game because of his athleticism. At 6'5", 320 pounds, Flynn moves extremely well and shows the ability to climb to the second level with ease. Montana State faces a tough test this week versus Northern Arizona, and it'll be up to Flynn and the rest of that offensive line for that matter to have success. The watch point in this game will be how well he can hold up in pass protection and how good are his feet and hands from a pass pro perspective. Patrick Ricard out of Maine is very strong at the point of attack. I'm very impressed with how he's able to engage first and disengage next very quickly. He has shown the ability to play inside as well as outside and can collapse the pocket on both ends of defense. I like to see how he attacks double team blocks, as he'll see a lot of that against the run-heavy attack of the Delaware Blue Hens. Now, Ricard has been very high on the NFL's radar since the preseason and has definitely lived up to the billing in his senior campaign, as he has 5.5 TFLs and 3 sacks on the season. His teammate Chris Malumba Shimanga was born in Montreal and is also a highly thought of Canadian Football League prospect. The 6'1", 245-pound linebacker has been a stud since his freshman season, showing above average ability to read and diagnose plays quickly and also have the acceleration and quickness to get there to make the play. Again, in this matchup versus Delaware, how consistent can he be in that department and how well can he get off blocks will be what I'm mostly interested in watching in his ball game. He's the leading tackle on the team with 44 tackles, 2 TFLs, and 2 sacks. Brendan Langley of Lamar is coming off a huge game versus Southeastern Louisiana. The 6', 193-pound corner, who may also be closer to 6'1", picked off the Lions 3 times en route to a victory. He has 4 interceptions on the season, as teams tend to shy away from throwing to his side. Now, versus Abilene Christian, I want to see how he's able to make himself a factor despite not being thrown to all game long. How effective can he be versus the run? Can he play multiple spots in the secondary? And when he is thrown at, can he do his part to make the play? Needless to say that the Marietta, Georgia native has had a significant impact on his Cardinals defense since transferring over from the University of Georgia. Although their game versus Albany State is being postponed due to Hurricane Matthew, Darius Hammond of Charleston Southern has had a great start to the season from an all-purpose standpoint. The 5'10", 192-pound Hammond has made his mark as a runner and as both a kickoff and punt returner. He averages 39.2 yards per kickoff return and 21 yards per punt return. Both are eye-popping statistics, and both are what makes him an intriguing specialist prospect moving forward. Whipping you around the Patriot League as we look at the standings, only 2 teams, Holy Cross and Lafayette, have played conference games, and obviously it was against one another. That'll change this week as Colgate Lehigh face off, as well as Holy Cross Bucknell and Lafayette and Fordham. Now we start to see the chaos called the Patriot League race ensue. I still feel strongly that this could be a 2-bid playoff league. Which 2 teams we'll just have to see, but it'll probably come down to the final weeks of the season, as it always does in the Patriot League. The VMI Keydets have been playing football since 1891, although the first known football game to have been played in the South took place in 1873 between VMI and next-door neighbor Washington and Lee. But since 1921, they've called Alumni Field home. Over the years, some of the rivalries have changed, like Virginia Tech and the University of Virginia. Some have remained the same, like the Military Classic of the South versus the Citadel. One thing hasn't changed is the way the Keydets march onto the field. Little John, as it's called, is a replica of the 1750 howitzer cannon that gets fired every time the Keydets come onto the field, after every VMI score, and at the end of each quarter. They've used this cannon since 1958, after the original one was retired back in 1957 after a 9-0 undefeated season, which now sits in the VMI Museum. The cannon presently used was designed by the late Colonel Carrie S. Tucker of the VMI faculty and is a 3/5 scale replica of the 1750 howitzer used in the Revolutionary War. Little John has gotten a lot of use the last 2 seasons, as the Keydets offense has been vastly improved under head coach Scott Wackenheim, and you can expect to hear more from Little John this weekend as VMI plays host to East Tennessee State.
The Ancient Eight as a whole has been solid so far this year. Remember, this is their 4th week of football as they start a full 2 weeks after the rest of the FCS. Already, you're starting to see teams jockeying for position. Conference play opened up last week. As you see here in the standings, team at the bottom are only 1 game out, so there's still enough time for them to make some noise and get right back in the Ivy race. As usual, we've seen some really good quarterback play so far this season. Cornell's Dalton Banks, Penn's Alec Torgerson, Harvard's Joe Viviano, Princeton's Chad Canoff, and Dartmouth's Jack Hennigan have all been impressive in their play at this juncture. This week on the schedule, Cornell-Harvard is the headliner, but don't sleep on Dartmouth versus Yale. That was a classic game last season, and although Yale is winless, the pride is still there, and in my opinion, so is the defensive talent. Now, this one should be interesting to say the least, so look for the Ivy League to provide some more wow moments like we saw in last week's Cornell-Colgate game.
Well, for me, I think, it kind of keeps the big picture in context. So if you're looking, especially in our league, where you're looking at student athletes being reflective of the student body and the mission of the institution, I think our league does that great. And just as importantly, there's some premier players, premier programs. It's an exciting level. It's traditionally very wide open, unpredictable. It's certainly not stale. It's on the cutting edge of an awful lot of things. And I just think it's a very entertaining level of football that is played by some very, very talented student athletes that have just kind of chosen a little bit different path as they try to balance their professional career in addition to their football future. And I can't speak for everybody, but an awful lot of our players have aspirations of playing on Sunday, but want a really good backup plan in case that doesn't work in the workforce. And so it's really kind of, it's reflective of everything that you want, of really good football, cutting edge offense and defense, unpredictability, people that are reflective of student bodies, and I think it's probably at its zenith of popularity and talent.
The Big Sky Conference is just as competitive top to bottom as the Missouri Valley Conference. I've been very impressed with both UC Davis and also Sacramento State, and although the Grizz are sitting at 1-4, you can't quite count them out just yet. As we take a look at this week's schedule, the Grizz should be able to grab a victory against Mississippi Valley State as they host them up in Missoula. UC Davis and Southern Utah should be another good game, and we'll jump right into the Midwest and Western slate of game previews with a big one in Cheney, Washington between Northern Colorado and Eastern Washington. This is an intriguing matchup between Northern Colorado and Eastern Washington. The Bears are off to an impressive 3-1 start and have done it without what I thought would be the biggest reason why they would be successful, their return game. The Bears offense has done an excellent job on both ends. Their running game and passing game are in unison, and they've protected the quarterback very well. Their defense, which has given up 36 points a game, will be tested heavily by the Eastern Washington Eagles, who come in with one of the top passers engaged guru and receivers in the nation in Cooper Kupp. The Eagles have also shored up what was a questionable offensive line, and that unit has played well as of late. And we know the Eagles struggle to stop the run, and that'll be the biggest key for Northern Colorado in this one. Play your game and don't try to be a cross-country runner in a 100-meter dash. I just think when you look at the level of consistency in which the Eagles play with, I think they can eke out a hard-earned victory versus Northern Colorado. In what should be an entertaining, high-scoring affair in Logan, Utah, Portland State travels to Weber State. The Vikings ended a 3-game losing streak last week with a win over Idaho State, and what has been the biggest issue for the Vikings so far this season has been turnovers and an inability to limit the big play defensively, which sounds a lot like Weber State, who has been in the same boat. Now, the Wildcats have shored up a bit on the defensive side of the ball, which has contributed to back-to-back wins. Offensively, you want to see if quarterback Jadrian Clark can build on last week's success. He, like Portland State's Alex Caressa, is a dual-threat player that puts a lot of pressure on your defense. I wouldn't expect much defense to be played in this ball game, which means it's going to be fun for the fans, but a headache for the coaches. I like Portland State to win this one. In the end, it'll come down to whose personnel can you trust the most, and I'll side with the visiting Vikings. Here is a really good Pioneer Football League matchup between Drake and Valparaiso. The Bulldogs haven't been able to match the physicality versus the run all season long. Stopping and run is about attitude and want to, and right now, you don't see either coming from Drake. Offensively, I think they have to feed the ball to tight end Eric Sauber. Yes, he's a tight end, but he has the ability to not only open up everything else in the passing game, but can also clear out space for Drake's running game to flourish. Valpo is coming off a tough, close loss to Morehead State in a game in which they played extremely well. Head coach Dave Cicchini has this program headed in the right direction, and we're seeing much more balance from Valpo now, and the young Crusaders have also found out last week how important ball security is to an outcome of a football game. Quarterback Ryan Clark's 2 interceptions proved to be the difference in the game. This week, I expect the Crusaders defense that has shown the ability to generate turnovers to once again frustrate their opponent en route to a victory. Look for Valpo to knock off Drake to even their record at 500. We have a battle between two 2-2 teams as the Jackrabbits and Salukis meet up on the gridiron. South Dakota State's offense is just as dynamic as anyone's in the FCS. The hope is that their defense can stop the bleeding and not make every game a shootout. Ideally, they'd like if every game mirrored last week's 52-14 drubbing of Western Illinois. In order for that to happen, they'll need an encore performance from their defensive line. Now, this week, the Jackrabbits are facing a talented runner in Daquan Isom, who's a jitterbug that's capable of picking up yards in chunks. Offensively speaking, you can't say enough glowing words about tight end Dallas Goddard, who is coming off an 8-catch, 204-yard, and 4-touchdown effort. Having a tight end that's a threat like that just opens things up for you offensively. Now, for the Salukis, the 2 crucial turnovers by quarterback Josh Strahan, one of which was returned for a touchdown, is what ultimately did them in versus Northern Iowa. Turning the ball over versus good teams will get you beat each and every week, and that's what they face this week in South Dakota State, a good football team. It'll be interesting to see how they plan to take away Dallas Goddard in the passing game and force quarterback Taron Christian to go to other targets consistently throughout the contest. I think last week was a reality check for the Salukis, and they'll regain their focus versus the Jackrabbits. I think they'll win in a close one. The matchup I believe they will win will be in the trenches with their ground game. One of the quiet stories of this season has been how good the Penguins have played so far. This week they travel to take on Illinois State, and you're talking about a Youngstown State team that lives on the opposite side of the line of scrimmage. Defensive end Derek Rivers has 5 TFLs and 4 sacks on the season and is more than living up to the NFL draft talk we saw in the preseason. On the opposite side, their offensive line has been the quiet MVP of this year. This is a unit that has only given up 5 sacks so far this season and has paved the way for a ground game that averages 262 yards a game. Illinois State used to be known for their ground game, but that's the area of their offense where they are having some issues. In my opinion, the offensive line is talented, but for whatever reason, they haven't enjoyed the success of a year ago. Yes, there is no more Marshawn Coverage, but that isn't an excuse for the lack of productivity. Their passing game, I think, can put some strain on this Penguins secondary. A big-time matchup to watch will be the Redbirds' Anthony Warren against Youngstown State's top corner, David Rivers. Expect the Redbirds defense, which has been just as good as Youngstown State's, to be game and get some early stops, but I don't think the Redbird offense will be able to take advantage. I like Youngstown State in a close one. A big matchup in the Missouri Valley Football Conference this week between Indiana State and Western Illinois. The Sycamores offense, which quite honestly has carried this team so far, ran out of gas last week and lost to Missouri State. In this matchup versus the Leathernecks, they'll need their defense to be able to get stops early on, and the best way to do that is to make this a Sean McGuire versus Isaac Harker game. If the Sycamores can post their best run defensive performance of the season, it'll allow their defensive line the ability to be much more aggressive, because right now they can't generate pressure with their defensive line alone and have to be able to send extra. They can't do that if they can't make Western Illinois one-dimensional. Now, the Leathernecks were stymied last week versus South Dakota State. They couldn't figure out how to slow down the Jackrabbits tight end Dallas Goddard. Hopefully, if you're head coach Charlie Fisher, last week was an aberration. The Leathernecks defensive line suffers similar issues as does Indiana State, although they do fare much better in the back seven with their ability to excel in the pass defense department. I think with the way they own the line of scrimmage up front, look for their offense to get back on track this week. I like Western Illinois at home. And finally, a matchup between two similar squads. Tennessee State and Eastern Illinois meet up in a huge OVC contest. The Tigers come into this ball game undefeated, boasting one of the best defensive linemen in Ebenezer Ogundeko, along with one of the best secondaries in the FCS, led by cornerback Ezra Robinson. Versus the Panthers, that perimeter defense will be put to the test, as Eastern Illinois loves to get the ball to Devin Church in space. Now, Church is a legit game breaker, and if Tennessee State is going to have any shot of winning, they have to make Church a non-factor. Offensively, you have to be impressed with the play last week of quarterback Ronald Butler. Butler stepped in for an injured O'Shea Ackerman Carter and did a sensational job leading his team to a comeback victory over UT Martin. Eastern Illinois plays the same type of offensive game that the Tigers do, and what I like about the Panthers is their ability to dictate coverage because of how they utilize Church in the passing game. So look for a lot of decoying with him in the passing game as they'll try to attack the intermediate area of Tennessee State's defense. And defensively, can they consistently win along the line of scrimmage? They're facing an offensive line that has only given up 2 sacks on the season. To me, that'll be the difference in the game. I like Tennessee State in this one. They can match up across the board one-on-one in the passing game and have a constant edge rusher presence in Ogundeko. So look for this to catapult them into the national polls, or up the national polls, as they move on to 5-0.
So that's a wrap for this week's episode of the FCS Kickoff. Be sure to follow us on all of our social media accounts. And also, if you miss any one of our episodes, which you shouldn't have, visit the website, footballgameplan.com/FCS Kickoff. Also, subscribe to our FCS Opening Drive podcast on iTunes, and be on the lookout for our FCS Conference whip-arounds with our FCS correspondents providing the analysis.